This podcast may contain explicit language. You are probably going to be a very successful computer person, but you're going to go through life thinking that girls don't like you because you're a nerd. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that won't be true. It'll be because you're an asshole. The Social Network is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm not Patton Oswalt. I am Dana Duncan.
We got no comments on that this week.
But I did.
Oh, that's right. You were at your conference and somebody legitimately asked you in real life, not even on social media. Okay. I forgot that.
Yes, I went to the coffee pot and they said, has anybody ever told you you look like Patton Oswalt? Not in the last 5 minutes.
Seriously, we need to get you two in a room together.
I think it might be a lot of fun. I think I could crack him up. I think the two of us together would be like, could get each other laughing pretty hard.
I'm not even sure what I would do in that circumstance if we ever got to the point where we'd have somebody like a Patton Oswalt on some program like this. Like, if we ever got to that point, just cancel the show. Like, we've peaked. There's probably nothing higher that we could do.
Never know.
That's probably true.
And you would always have regrets because you would say, maybe that was just the tip of the iceberg.
No, I know myself a lot better than that. I would have such imposter syndrome by that point that, no, I would spin out and it would be all sorts of problems. I'm already second guessing myself as the host of this program. I just know that of the two of us, I'm the only one that can do it.
Okay.
Anyway, tonight for our 274th episode, we revisit The Social Network from 2010. Directed by David Fincher, written by Aaron Sorkin, cinematography by Jeff Cronenweth, music by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, starring Jesse Eisenberg as Mark Zuckerberg, Andrew Garfield as Eduardo Severin, Justin Timberlake as Sean Parker, Armie Hammer as Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, the Winklevi, Max Minghella as Divya Narendra, Brenda Song as Christy Lee, Rashida Jones as Mary Lynn Delpy, John Getz as Cy, David Selby as Gage, Denise Grayson as Gretchen, Douglas Urbanski as Larry Summers, Rooney Mara as Erica Albright, and Joseph Mazzello as Dustin Moskovitz. Now, of course, we can't do this by ourselves. We bring in the great talents of our returning celebrity guest, a 5-time club member, getting pretty dangerously close to that 10-time mark, co-host of the War Starts at Midnight podcast, making his current 9th appearance on the show to date. Please welcome back Peterson W. Hill.
Excited to be back in the seat. It's been 6 or 7 months. Is it 6?
March was Dolce.
That sounds
the
right.
Dolce Vita?
Yeah, February, March, something like that.
Yeah.
So, I feel very poised for this episode. I am a Facebook user now for 20 years. This summer marks 20 years.
I guess I've been for 19. Yeah, I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, I graduated May of 2005. And then I got my Facebook account, and back when it was cool. Back when Facebook was cool, I'll say.
That is true. It took me a while to get on Facebook, and I got on it in 2006. I distinctly remember hearing about it for the first time in chemistry class. But at that point, I was still on MySpace, and I was getting very tired of everybody arguing over who their top friends were.
I think I got a MySpace around maybe like a month before I got a Facebook.
Okay.
And MySpace just, I'll say, you know, it kind of understands, this movie kind of understands, MySpace was just not as user-friendly. It was not as aesthetically pleasing. And then things changed.
Facebook is the Apple of social media content, whereas MySpace was much more of the Samsung type. You could very much personalize it, but you had to go
True.
and do all of the extra settings and the coding and all the other shit yourself. Whereas Facebook kind of was user friendly and one size fit all, and it had the same kind of user interface at all times for everybody. Now you could set most of the same things up, but it looked pretty uniform. And so the difference in user from person to person was not as high. So it was much easier for the average person who was not tech savvy to pick it up and use it, which is probably why all of our parents are now the only users on Facebook.
Well, also with MySpace, it was much harder to like find people. It was not nearly as easy. And then also, I think MySpace is still around. Is your page still active?
It might be.
I hope to God that my MySpace page is gone with the wind. Truly. Hopefully, let Brenda's song toss into the trash can and light it up on fire.
Yeah, I have no idea.
How do you figure out how long you've been on Facebook?
Ooh, you might have to go into your profile.
Just looking at my profile, it doesn't have a date.
Okay.
You know, so I know that I got it around June of, right after I graduated high school in 2005. I got it because I was like, oh, you know, I can start befriending people, going to University of Alabama. I could start thinking about like, you know, social clubs, like things I want to be a part of. And yeah.
Likely. I'm probably one of your first friends. So I would guess that if there's something that says like you've been friends with Tom for so long, that's roughly how long you've had Facebook. But we won't wait for you.
Okay.
Technical geriatric to figure it out on your own.
You too.
Okay. This movie is clearly important to people. I've heard many a person say that this is possibly the best movie of the 21st century so far. I think there are some other movies, particularly that Peterson has been on, that are in that conversation. Parasite. I think that was recently the #1 movie on the New York Times best top 100 of the 21st century so far that they put out. And I don't know what was the fan vote one or the user submitted one, but the critics poll had Parasite #1. This film was 10th, but I think it has a large cultural footprint in that it kind of came out in a moment where Facebook was still new and cool, and our parents hadn't yet gotten on it for the most part. If they had, you didn't have to necessarily add them. You were kind of like dodging their friend request yet. So with that, I think this is one of those movies that, because of the time and where it came out, it very similarly to me colors the historical record of what people perceive about Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, the modern tech giants, and such, because it plays out to me kind of the same way we perceive Watergate through the lens of All the President's Men. It's a movie that is so close to the actual event and all the stuff around it that everything about the event and the founding and such is built into what this movie became. And since then, we've had multiple other tech stories, people that have come to certain celebrity status and fame as part of the tech giants, notably Elon Musk. And I will say here again, fuck Elon. How do you think that our perception of everything in this movie is different because the movie came out?
My question would be there is today or 15 years ago? Because I think things have changed drastically. One, in a relationship with Facebook, because in 2010 it was kind of still cool.
But when this movie came out, my theory is that these people were treated like rock stars. Mark Zuckerberg was part of the cultural lexicon. He became a semi-celebrity to himself, for good or ill, because of this movie. And likewise, you have similar people. I mean, we know the CEOs and founders of several of the major companies, like Larry and Sergey at Google, or Steve Jobs obviously was already a fairly big figure, but he had 2 different movies come out shortly after this movie about his life. I think we have celebrated these people as a result of this movie, and that has eroded over time based on our understanding of how these platforms have been set up and how they're taking advantage of us. But I still think the impression exists that these people are like true geniuses and not just some people who stumbled into. I mean, the book that this is based on is The Accidental Billionaires.
It's a hack job, though. That book is... Eduardo Saverin basically wrote it with Ben Mesrick. He emailed Ben Mesrick at like 3 a.m. or something and was like, hey, I've got a story. You interested? So during the lawsuits is when it's getting written. That's why I think Saverin is pretty sympathetic in this movie, and that guy in real life is kind of like all these guys. They all became billionaires and they're all pieces of shit. Like,
yeah, everybody in this movie, if you look them up, is a billionaire.
Peter Thiel was part of the group of 7 that created PayPal, along with Elon Musk and all of them. And of those 7, they're all billionaires because they took their money after they sold PayPal, which I believe is owned by eBay now, and took their cash and all became angel investors and hedge fund investors and invested in other stock accounts. So I have read books from Peter Thiel, but after Thiel's little escapades with Trump previously, I have very little time for him. I also have very little time for Musk because they're hypocrites. Musk took all the money that he could get to make sure Tesla was off the ground. And then the minute he did, he said, well, I don't really think government should be investing in private industry.
And Peter Thiel, I mean, his personal life is very unsavory, to say the least.
Okay.
But I think Elon Musk is one of those guys, obviously he's turned into like one of the true monsters of the current age, I would say. But he did start by trying to do something that would be good for the world with Tesla. Obviously, he used those funds in the worst possible way, and he came from, apartheid diamond mining. That's what his dad did. So, I think it's really interesting when you watch this movie is Eduardo Saverin's a great example of somebody. I think you have the most sympathy for him in this movie. But then you look and he dodged $700 million in capital gains taxes. He's no longer a citizen of America because he's like, I don't want to pay those taxes. No thanks.
He was Brazilian, and he's played by Andrew Garfield in the movie with no accent at all. And from what I understand, he has a fairly heavy Brazilian accent.
He's also the wealthiest person in Brazil, and I believe now I think it's Singapore is where his wife's from, where he also lives. So he's the wealthiest person in 2 countries. And this movie paints him as this very sympathetic person, which I think Garfield, inherently might be the most wet-eyed sympathetic actor we have. He just exudes it.
Yeah, he's a very hard on your sleeve actor, and he cannot play reserved. Which
I do appreciate about him. I love that he wears it on his sleeve.
But he's got a very distinct style that lends itself to, there are certain roles he just cannot do. His range is very defined, and he's a very good actor within that range, but you know exactly what you're getting with an Andrew Garfield character the same way you know exactly what you're getting from a Greg Kinnear character.
I don't need to see his There Will Be Blood. I don't need to see his Plain View.
I was just going to say that. Can you imagine Garfield starring in a Scorsese film?
Yes.
Yes,
I can, because he did.
He's fantastic in Silence.
He is awesome in Silence.
He's wonderful in Silence.
That is a fantastic
I'm not familiar
movie
with that at all.
So it's about a Jesuit priest who go to Japan and try to spread the gospel because they're looking for their
mentor is Liam Neeson, and Liam Neeson goes off the grid. And so they go to Japan, even though Christians are persecuted, to try and find him. And he has since been converted basically away from the faith. And the entire exercise of the movie is a commentary on whether or not you basically give over your faith to the cultural norms at the time in order to fit into a particular society. Because, of course, in a Scorsese movie, there's got to be raw amounts of violence, a character questioning his own reality and faith, and definite heavy undercurrents of Christianity.
Yeah, I can't imagine why that would be prevalent in a Scorsese film.
That being said, Silence might be the best movie that he's made since The Departed for me. And I really like The Wolf of Wall Street.
Ooh, yeah, I think, I don't know. We can get on that rabbit hole and I can be there for another hour.
Yeah, I know. You and rabbit holes. Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah, with Nicole Kidman and Aaron Eckhart, 2010. Great movie.
All right. So, some background on The Social Network. We did originally discuss this going back to, Dad, do you have any idea which season it was?
Season 2, wasn't it?
No, it's season 1. September 23rd, 2020. So shortly after I moved to Madison.
I listened to that episode.
I'm sorry. Our guest apparently did not realize that we could go for more than an hour, and so he just left before we did the scoring. It's one of the weird,
so I've got like 30 minutes left.
Well, he excuses himself. Anyway, so background on the actual movie. The Social Network was released on October 1st, 2010. On a budget of $40 million, it would go on to gross $224.9 million, finishing as the 32nd highest film at the worldwide box office for 2010. The Social Network received widespread critical acclaim, appeared on over 70 critics' top 10 lists of the best films of 2010, and won the Best Picture from the National Board of Review, National Society of Film Critics, New York Film Critics Circle, and Los Angeles Film Critics Association, making it only the third film in history, after which two other films to sweep the Big Four Critics Awards.
Hint?
They're both from the 90s.
LA Confidential.
Correct.
Unforgiven.
Nope, not quite. Another Best Picture winner in Schindler's List.
Schindler's, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
It went on to receive 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director for David Fincher, Best Actor for Jesse Eisenberg, Cinematography and Sound Mixing, and 1 for Best Adapted Screenplay for Aaron Sorkin, Best Original Score for Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and Best Film Editing. Following the close of the decade, The Social Network was recognized as one of the best films of the 2010s. Metacritic reported that it was listed on over 30 film critics' top 10 lists for the 2010s, including 8 first-place rankings and 4 second-place rankings. Esquire named The Social Network the best of the 2010s, calling it Citizen Kane for the internet age, and dubbing it the movie of our new millennium. In June 2025, the film ranked number 10 on both New York Times' lists of the 100 best movies of the 21st century. In July 2025, it ranked number 13 on Rolling Stone's list of the 100 best movies of the 21st century. In January 2019, Aaron Sorkin revealed that Scott Rudin had suggested the development of a screenplay for a sequel, noting, "A lot of very interesting dramatic stuff has happened since the movie ends." On April 26, 2024, Sorkin said he had been working on the script for a new Facebook movie tied to the January 6th United States Capitol attack. On June 25th, 2025, it was announced that a sequel, The Social Network Part 2, was in active development, with Sorkin returning to write and direct. Reports of potential casting included Mikey Madison as Francis Haugen and Jeremy Allen White as Jeff Horwitz, although no official deal has yet been made or made public. Jeremy Strong was also being reported to be in talks for a role, speculated to be either a Wall Street Journal editor or to replace Eisenberg as Mark Zuckerberg. The Social Network currently holds a 96% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 95 score on Metacritic, and a 3.9 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So, is this David Fincher's best film?
I think so. I liked Benjamin Button, and I'm not a big fan of Fight Club.
Really?
So
3/4 of this podcast was on that Fight Club episode, and yeah, it shall live in infamy.
Is this Fincher's best movie? You know, I would go into this watch this time, and I've seen this 4 or 5 times, with the impression that I don't think it is. I always said Zodiac, which I still to this day think is his best. And then I watched it this time, and it really has me questioning, do I like this or Zodiac more? Haven't seen Zodiac in a few years, so I think that does need a rewatch, but I love Zodiac. It's absolutely phenomenal. But I mean, so it's very close.
So I think most people would say The Social Network or before are usually the ones in the conversation for his best movie. All things considered, for Mank and some of the other movies that have followed, I just don't think that most people are going to include those in the conversation. I think this is his best, most conventional movie because it's somewhat of a biography, and yet even with the color tones that he has, it feels different. It's somewhat of a legal drama, and it's kind of got this action thriller vibe to it, even though there's really no action happening. It's just got this kinetic feeling to it, which he brings to something like an Aaron Sorkin script that has a lot of propulsive momentum to it to begin with, just in the way that the lines are delivered, notably in a Sorkin script that most cinephiles know by this point. However, if we're talking the film that is most specific to his aesthetic style and what he would say is probably his best movie, it's either going to be Fight Club or Seven, because those get at what to me are probably the most deprived, perverted senses of how he sees humanity. I think he's quoted as saying that humanity is perverse, and he always wants to depict that on screen, which is why a lot of his movies are just so challenging in that regard. So for me, because I'm not a huge fan of Fight Club, I would say it's 7, but I think this is his closest that he will probably ever come to winning an Oscar, because at this point, I don't think he's interested.
Well, I also don't think the industry's necessarily interested in him. He doesn't make movies that, other than this, that I guess make a ton of money. He's expensive. He probably has a pretty good quote. And then you take his movies are expensive. Now, granted, he's very good with his budgets. He knows, like, to the dollar what he needs to spend. And I think that's incredibly important. He learned that from Alien 3, probably. And, you know, it's hard because I think there's got to be something out there that is going to lure him back in. If you've ever heard about his 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, that movie sounds absolutely bananas. So I think he's definitely got it in him. He's currently doing the Cliff Booth thing.
Yeah, which is a weird.
It's weird. I don't know. I'm glad Tarantino's not wasting his time with it. I'd rather him do something else, but I don't want Fincher wasting his time with it either. I thought The Killer was kind of boring. I think Fassbender's good in it just because I think he's good in everything. But I don't know. He certainly has it in him because his last movie before The Killer was Mank, which I think is interesting. And then before that, it was Gone Girl.
I mean, I like Mank more than I like Citizen Kane as far as a watch. I think it informs a lot of my opinions on Citizen Kane. But I also was a Killer stan. I definitely loved that movie. I thought it was his best that I'd probably seen since Gone Girl, and might be up there with some of his best personally for me. Now, I watched it for this program, hoping that my father would do the same, and then we'd have a discussion on it, but that never materialized. And I don't think he's still seen it. But regardless, Dad, do you want to jump in? What do you think is Fincher's best movie?
I would probably say 7. Although, yeah, I would say 7. It's the one that really kind of got me interested, and I'm not big on the psychological thrillers, but in this particular case, there was a lot there to work with and kept my interesting.
That makes me more
So-
interested for the episode.
Yes, teasing ahead, in a few weeks, we will be doing an episode on 7, combining both our discussion of last week with Kevin Spacey, along with our discussion this week on David Fincher. Yay!
Kevin Spacey, a woke king.
So, Dad, what is your relationship to this movie?
Saw it on video after it came out. I did not see it in theaters. And then I watched it for the show again, and I've watched it now. So I think this is the 3rd time I've seen it.
Do you like this movie?
Yes. It's a little fanciful because I think that it overblows a lot of what took place. I think it's done primarily for dramatic effect, but I think it is overblown a bit.
Fair. I remember seeing this when it roughly came out. I don't remember. I definitely didn't see it in theaters. I think it was a rental after the fact. But I definitely remember this somehow taking the, I don't know, it was like a cultural moment. Everybody talked about this movie. And it was not one that I thought was like, okay, why are we talking about this movie? But it became the favorite for Best Picture early on and then got unseated by the end. And if you look at the box office rankings, you look at some of the critical stuff, like, I don't think it's that big of an upset that The King's Speech eventually won. And notably that by the time we got to this point, this was the first one since probably Crash unseated Brokeback Mountain, where you had the front runner losing to a challenger near the end. But we had a series of this like afterward where I don't think Argo was the favorite going in, and it kind of like overtook in like the last month to become the favorite. The same happened with 12 Years a Slave, where the last like month, I know it was like neck and neck with Gravity, but Gravity was the clear favorite that year, and 12 Years a Slave kind of came up from behind and beat it.
I feel like 12 Years a Slave was bound to win that Oscar.
That was a 50-50 shot. I think it's the only time that the Producers Guild has awarded it to 2 films.
Well, I think the Gravity year is so interesting because like it gets all those technical awards, which it should. I think Gravity's a technical film, but I don't think my parents went and watched Gravity and they're like, that was a fun roller coaster, and that's about it. And that's kind of my take on Gravity too. I'm like, this is a blast. Really enjoy it. It doesn't need to be 12 Years a Slave for Best Picture, though.
I think the right film probably won in that particular year, but I'm not here to litigate the Oscars of a particular year. We'll leave that to other programs. Anyway, my point being that The Social Network, I think, has been aided by the fact it didn't win Best Picture. And so people give it extra credit because they think it was wronged in the moment. Had this won Best Picture, I think this film is much more forgotten.
I don't know if it's forgotten, but, you know, The King's Speech winning Best Picture is the worst thing that ever happened to it. Because everyone's like, oh, it's terrible. It's an awful movie. King's Speech is a perfectly fine movie.
Yeah.
I don't love it, but it's perfectly fine. A great Colin Firth performance. Guy Pearce is good. Everyone's good in that movie. But I think Social Network certainly has a more lasting impression.
Yeah. I think The Social Network is probably the better of the 2 films, just personally, if you watch both of them side by side. There's nothing wrong with The King's Speech, but it's made for people that are like my dad, as opposed to where The Social Network seemed to cut across most ages and categories, genders, etc. I think that it actually helped it in the overall rankings where people, maybe you don't win Best Picture, but you win the overall argument that it's somehow this culturally important film. And I think that people came to the film in large degree, even after the Oscars, because it lost Best Picture, and people made a big fuss over the fact that it lost.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the quality of the two is that close. I think Social Network pretty much blows it out of the water. King's Speech is good, but I think Social Network's one of the great films, I would say. This one I saw, I think it came out the same weekend as Let Me In, a truly forgotten film. Matt Reeves' remake of Left, Right, Went In. And my wife and I went and saw that Thursday at midnight, back when you had to go at midnight. Saw that at midnight, and the Social Network, we were like, we want to be awake and present. So we saw that Friday evening. And I just remember leaving being completely exhilarated. And I don't know if you guys remember the trailer for this thing when it dropped. That had people just buzzing and talking, being like, wow, look at this thing. They actually made the Facebook movie, and it looks interesting and dark and weird. And that was like 2008 when it got announced, I want to say. Maybe early 2009. Like, it really started to take shape, and everyone was like, what the hell is this going to be? It's like watching people use Facebook, and it just turns into this incredible, kind of Citizen Kane-like film of a tech giant struggling with his responsibility and his burden, especially at the age of 21, 22 years old. So I think this is, truly a movie of this age, but is truly timeless at this point.
So, Dad, do you have a plot summary ready for us?
Yes. The Social Network dramatizes the turbulent origins of Facebook, tracing its rise from a dorm room project to a global tech empire. The story centers on Harvard student Mark Zuckerberg, Jesse Eisenberg, whose brilliance and ambition lead him to create a revolutionary social networking site. But as Facebook explodes in popularity, personal relationships unravel, and the legal battles erupt. Former friends and collaborators, including Eduardo Saverin, Andrew Garfield, Sean Parker, Justin Timberlake, and the Winklevoss twins, Armie Hammer, clash over ownership, betrayal, and the blurred lines between genius and opportunism. It's a tale of innovation, ego, and the cost of success in the digital age.
Thanks, Dad. So what is the movie about?
I think it's about a lot of things, about the modern age for one, but I think a big thing is, and this is where the Winklevosses truly come in for me, is that it is about the changing of societal norms, and the Winklevoss being like, we're men of Harvard, we have to act this certain way, we've got to be, gentlemanly, and all that's gone out the way. It's now this new fast-moving tech mogul coming in being like, this is how the world works now. I'm going to take your intellectual property. It's fine. I'll just pay you a settlement. I'm not worried about it, which you can hear him or see him saying, like in the books. He has emails that are uncovered that are truly about that. And it's about that kind of changing of the guard in some way. And then I think also about how maybe it took somebody who was socially, like truly wanted social connection, had no idea how to do it. So he creates this algorithmic way to communicate with other people, but can't even carry on a conversation like a normal person. So it's that kind of where we're headed potentially with people not being able to communicate and being in their own bubbles and isolation. I mean, that's like 2 of the 40 things I think this movie's about.
Well, for me, after having watched it previously twice before, it dawned on me at the very end of the movie what this movie, or what it really is about. The fact that he is clicking on his ex-girlfriend's profile asking to friend her, and then is refreshing to see if she does. This is a film about about Zuckerberg's inability to connect, and really what it is success and power, trying to overcome his own social and personal insecurities in life, his lack of feeling masculine in a world full of masculine achievers, especially at Harvard. His inability to get into the right social clubs, the inability to make the connections, the friendships he wants. So he is going to use this as an opportunity to overcome all of those insecurities and just use money and power to, I mean, I guess the adage is to make himself into a much more masculine person than he wanted to be. I guess it's standing at the urinal and checking out the size.
Okay. That was a very long and winding road to get to that moment, but all right.
Is he looking on both sides because the wink flosses are on both sides?
I guess. But that's, I mean,
just
why else would he be still, after all this time, going and checking out and trying to befriend his ex-girlfriend?
The movie is very much presented in a way that feels somewhat of a diagnosis, and somewhat prophetically a diagnosis of the culture of social media and online engagement, which is stalker behavior, tracking people that you just cannot give up on, that you have a very loose connection with, righting wrongs somehow. I think the movie really, in the current way I watched it, presents him as the very first incel.
First? You think
the very first, and he's basically created an environment for all of the incels to congregate and take back their own lives. It's not your fault. You're not an asshole. You're just trying so hard to be because everybody else has wronged you. And so he is, you know, the moment at the end of Oppenheimer where he says, I think we actually destroyed the world by creating this. We were so worried that it was going to be that the bomb would explode and the world would end, but just creating the bomb was the thing that set everything off and destroyed the world. In his operation here, the creation of Facebook, right or wrong, and I think the movie is actually very cynical about this, has created an environment that has not just changed, but potentially destroyed the world.
So I'm going to say two things to that point. One is that Oppenheimer understands and recognizes the evil he has put into the world. And at least the version we get in Nolan's film, Oppenheimer is very ambivalent about making the bomb, but knowing, well, if I don't do this right now, the Germans might do it first. And that's the greater evil.
Yes.
So that there is some self-awareness there, I think, with Oppenheimer.
And they have the benefit of hindsight in making that film, 60, 70 years
100%.
removed compared to 4 years.
4 years, 5 years, yeah. But I think the other thing is, I think Mark Zuckerberg doesn't understand the evil he's writ on the world. And I don't think he did it on purpose. I think he probably came out and said, you know what, I want to make this thing where people can connect. And the early stages of Facebook, I think were pretty healthy. When it was contained to like college kids and it was a much safer space.
That would be much more persuasive if this movie doesn't start with him basically reacting to a breakup by doing face smash.
No, I'm not saying by any means that it's like a good thing, but I don't think he knew what it was going to writ on the world, what he was doing.
Most definitely. I don't think he understands the ramifications even now that he has directly caused a genocide in another country.
Yeah. That or presidential election. Look, the list is long. It's nuts to me. Just, today you see something on AI and you're like, it's hard to tell sometimes if it's true or not. And all of this starts with him because I think he wants to live this digital world. He wants to live wants to have a way where he can appear to be, as Dana was saying, that masculine ideal where he's, you know what, in some VR world, he can be, you know, a chest thumping Viking. And that's just not who he is, which I don't know. But I don't want to confuse Zuckerberg, the man, with Zuckerberg, the character in this. And that's, I think, a pretty stark differential because, you know, this is very much a work of fiction in many ways. As I said, having Eduardo Saverin be like the sympathetic character. He's also a moron in this movie. Like, he's making all the wrong decisions.
Yeah.
Like, we have sympathy for him because Andrew Garfield's fantastic in the movie and he just exudes that sympathy, but he's also an idiot. Like,
he can make $300K in a summer just trading futures, but he doesn't have his lawyers review a simple contract.
And I think also with the Saverin character, and it's the same thing that goes back to the Winklevoss. He's like, he can't exist in this world. He just doesn't understand it. It's moving so fast, Facebook is, in a way that other things don't. You know, he's like, oh, I got to go get my Lehman Brothers internship. And the Winklevoss are like, well, we got to win the Olympics and then we're going to make all that money. Like, it's truly people that, I mean, Saverin probably had a little bit harder time because he was a minority in America, but the Winklevoss are truly like Hitler's golden childs. They're 6'5", 220 Olympians, men of Harvard. And the world changes so fast around them and they're left in the dust. And I think that's a lot of what this film is about, is the changing of the world and how quickly things changed without us understanding the ramifications of it.
The one thing about this movie comparative to, I mentioned something like Oppenheimer a second ago, most of those stories from a character development are following the character directly. It's like a first person perspective. Even something like Lawrence of Arabia, where we're somewhat removed and there's like a third person aspect to it, how other people saw him and the story and the myth that built up around him. This movie is much more presented similarly in that light, where it's everybody else's story about who he is. So I think there is something to be said to remove yourself from who he is in the movie compared to everything else. The problem that I have is that the movie makes him out to be this, especially the ending line, which I think is the thing that you're supposed to take away from it, gives him such a permission structure as this genius. And the movie does a great job of building him up to being the person that built Facebook, saw what its potential was able to mold and modify it into this gigantic thing. I mean, it is one of the 7 or 8 largest companies in the world right now, and it's worth like $1.5 trillion valuation.
It's also changed our way of life in ways that it's like the invention of the car almost. Like, just the way that it's ubiquitous. If you aren't on it, you know somebody who is. I'm going to ask a question to both of you. You both kind of alluded to the ending. Do you take the ending as Aaron Sorkin saying, you know what, he's not that bad a guy, and you see him refreshing? Do you find that as sympathetic? Because I read the ending as like, he's like the fucking shark from Jaws. Like, okay. Like, truly, like, he is a villain. And I think that Sorkin, because Sorkin loves his complicated geniuses, that's like one of his things. I think Sorkin has sympathy for Zuckerberg. And I think Fincher is like, this guy scares the shit out of me.
That's an interesting thought. I've always looked at it as a sympathetic telling that, oh my gosh, this guy just cannot give up on the one girl who dumped him in a bar, who I think is also an amalgamation. Like, that character does not literally exist.
She doesn't literally exist. No, she's
no, but I think just the opposite, which is that no matter how much money he's made and how much power he's amassed, he still is insecure, which will only mean that he'll continue to amass more power and more wealth, because somehow or another that's going to take him over. So I don't see it. I think it's foreshadowing that this is just the start.
So Dana sees him more as a Citizen Kane as opposed to a sympathetic figure.
And I guess, I mean, this is why I think I truly this viewing, and I've seen this 5, maybe 6 times before this. I think this viewing solidified it to me as like, no, this is truly like one of the great films because it gets, I think, an incredible dissection of these people. Just on Rev Almanac a few months ago, talking about Barry Lyndon being up for Best Picture that year. And you guys talked about Barry Lyndon back in what, January, February?
Yes, January.
Yes.
Which I think that's come around to being my favorite Kubrick, maybe my second favorite, toys that and The Shining. That film ends with, and they're all equal now. Like that closing coda, like just hits me like a ton of bricks every time. And I can't stop thinking about that ending. And that to me, like the most Kubrickian moment of this movie to me is when you're watching the Royal Regatta in the Winklevoss rowing. And it's like the last straw where Sorkin and Fincher are saying, nope, the world's not going to work out for these guys. These guys are all equal now. He puts them all on the same footing in a way that kind of only could be in today's world.
I'll push back just slightly. There are a couple of takes earlier on before the ending that I think lead up to that point. And knowing that, as most cinephiles know, David Fincher is very meticulous about what takes he uses and part of the editing and what he's getting even from small glances from his actors. So nothing is unintentional in his movies. But there's some looks when Eisenberg is on screen around the point where his relationship with Savarin deteriorates, where it looks like he feels guilty or he feels bad for how things have played out. He thinks he's made the right move, but such as when Savarin comes in and smashes his laptop and then he rebukes Justin Timberlake after the fact.
I think an incredible moment. The capper of that scene I always forget.
To me, that's him saying already that this is a much more sympathetic character. You don't have to build him as all evil. Like I don't relate to a lot of Zuckerberg in this moment or in this movie, but this is one place where I could say you've got a lot of personal turmoil. You've been neglected by people that you're interested in, by people that are friends, people that have underestimated you. And I can understand why he's done this. And he's seen a singular vision in a way nobody else has and pursued it, even at the cost of the friendships. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't affect him either. And I think that's where the line you're just trying so hard to be is that he's recognizing that he has this singular vision and knows where Facebook is headed in a way nobody else does, which is why I think he was the only one to lead what it became. But by the same token, he does it in such a blinders way that it makes for really bad personal relationships for him. And I think you kind of have to in order to build that thing up, but it comes at a personal cost. And I think that's what I'm taking away from the end.
Do you remember, this was probably, I don't know, maybe a year in the pandemic or maybe even before the pandemic, but Zuckerberg did his tour across America.
No.
What's happening? So he went to, I know he stopped in Tuscaloosa where University of Alabama is. He stopped in Memphis, had barbecue. When he was in Alabama, he talked to Nick Saban and talked to all these people throughout America. And it showed a curiosity that he has that I feel like came from a genuine place. And that's, I think, pretty interesting knowing, one, what we know about the guy, but then also the way Sorkin paints him. It is a little bit reminiscent of that you didn't have to go so rough on him. That's what it feels like.
I don't think he is malicious in a lot of the ills that he has birthed, but I think he's also quite naive.
He's ignorant to it. Yeah, which, look, if I had, he's $250 billion now probably. some insane number. And when you have that much money, you lose complete touch with reality. It's impossible to ground yourself when you have that much money. You know,
And each of these billionaires has become a nation state to themselves. And if they control one of these major companies, they're even that much more powerful. That's why, I mean, Elon's essentially a state actor who is operating within another state to begin with. So, I mean, but yet we have to reckon with how important we've made these figures. It's not just from the celebrity status, but it's because their wealth, their popularity, their ability to be online, all of these things are connected. And it's, again, why I think this movie has shaped some of the cultural cachet behind it and given a permission structure somewhat that we've invited these people in thinking that they're geniuses. And again, not in maybe a malicious way, but they're incredibly naive and haven't reckoned with the potential destruction that they have wrought.
Well, and I will say, your guest on the previous episode, I'm drawing a blank on his name, Brendan or Brandon, he, I think, was in the tech world. And he was very, he was like, he liked all these guys. He was like, oh, it's really impressive what all these guys did, which in some way it is impressive what they did. But the human toll that things like Facebook has wrought on the world, it's just, it's so hard to take the good and the bad. And granted, look, I'm a hypocrite. I have my Facebook account still. And part of the reason I have it is because I've got pictures from when I was a camp counselor, you know, from 06 to 2010 that I would never have. If I got on Facebook, they're gone. And I've got connections with friends that I'm like, oh, you know, if I want to talk to my friend Kelsey, it's got to be on Facebook. You know, I don't have a phone number anymore. So there's a portion and a piece of me that's like, well, I can't just get rid of Facebook. But also I'm like, but it's like one of the great evils of the modern world.
Yeah.
You know, it's this weird dichotomy of people and humanity. And I think Fincher and Sorkin turned out to be a great team in that regard.
All right. Did you know? During one of the depositions, it is mentioned that the invention of Facebook made Mark Zuckerberg the biggest thing on campus that included 19 Nobel laureates, 15 Pulitzer Prize winners, 2 future Olympians, and a movie star. One of the lawyers then asks, who was the movie star? And the response is, does it matter? The movie star was, in fact, Natalie Portman, who was enrolled at Harvard as a junior and senior when Mark Zuckerberg was a freshman. She actually invited Aaron Sorkin to a dinner party with her Harvard friends to provide him insider information on the school's social life at the time Facebook was created. Let me ask this question. Do you think that the collegiate parties at Harvard are better, worse, average than the normal ones that you would go to? Like, I know nobody's technically on the level of UW-Madison here, but the average party school.
You know, I don't know. So I went to the University of Alabama, and I will say, I don't think I really went to that many traditional parties. My college girlfriend, she was in a sorority. It was a big point of contention between us because I was like, y'all are nerds. Like, why are you doing that? So she'd go to fraternity parties sometimes, but my friends were all musicians, and we worked for the paper, and like, we had like house parties and band parties off campus. I didn't do any like normal college partying. And I don't think even the parties I see in the movie, probably the one that makes the most sense and probably the closest to how it was Caribbean night at the Jewish fraternity. Like that is more reminiscent, I think, of more college parties. Now, granted, Alabama has a robust Greek scene that I wanted nothing to do with. But that's my experience. No, I think that's the most accurate. The one in Palo Alto at the end, I think that seems pretty accurate. Just a bunch of people in a house, screaming at each other. That seems pretty accurate too.
I don't think Harvard's parties are overly wild.
That would be my guess as well. I think it might be slightly embellished here.
And the simple fact is that wildness in parties tends to be around people who need to let loose. And at that point in time, if you've got money and influence and everything else, what do you have to let loose from?
Did you know? After casting, David Fincher forbade principal actors from meeting their real-life counterparts until filming was completed. Did you know? Andrew Garfield came into rehearsal with a copy of Economics for Dummies. Inspired by that move, Jesse Eisenberg bought a copy of C++ for Dummies. According to Eisenberg, both he and Garfield read the introductions of their books and then put them down. I've read the economics one. Yeah, the introduction's about all you need.
Okay. I'm not going to ever pick up either one.
I think I used that to pass microeconomics in like freshman or sophomore year of college. Yeah. Did you know the song that plays during the opening credits is only played 2 more times during the film, and each time Trent Reznor recorded the piano from farther away, giving it the illusion of echoing and isolation in the final cut?
You're talking about the score when he's walking the campus, right?
Correct.
Okay. Not the White Stripes song that starts. Okay.
Yes, the opening song that's over the top, that's like the dun, 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 dun. And then finally, did you know the real Lawrence Summers, or Larry Summers, as he's traditionally called the film's portrayal of his meeting with the Winklevoss twins fairly accurate? He went on to say, "I've heard it said that I can be arrogant. If that's true, I surely was on that occasion. One of the things you learn as a college president is that if an undergraduate is wearing a tie and jacket on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, there are 2 possibilities. One is that they're looking for a job and have an interview. The other is that they are an asshole. This was the latter case. Rarely have I encountered such swagger, and I tried to respond in kind."
That scene. What are you doing here? Why are you in my office?
Yeah.
Thanks for the economic lesson. I was the Secretary of the Treasury.
He wasn't the Secretary of the Treasury.
Yes, he was before he became
headmaster of
Under whom?
I want to say it was under,
I think it's
Carter.
George H.W.
Because every time somebody brings up his resume, it's him as the head of the Council of Economic Advisors under Obama.
Correct. Then he was Treasury Secretary under Clinton.
Okay, you are correct. All right.
Yeah, 99 to 01.
Yep. Director
So
of the
Clinton
National
and,
Economic Council in 2009 to 2010. And he was, Secretary of the Treasury from 99 to 01. So the last couple of years of the Clinton administration.
Yep.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's Larry Summers for you, who I think accurately predicted the economic downfall of the pandemic. But anyway.
Yes. And predicted the housing collapse in 2009.
But since this is a revisit, we will be back to you soon with the Stanley Rubric. That looks like a good spot for our first break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 275th episode, we welcome back 5-time club member Sarah Duncan to discuss possibly the greatest war film ever made, with the original All Quiet on the Western Front from 1930, celebrating its 95th anniversary this year. It's also, because it's our 275th episode, it's one of the large films that we have always promised to discuss on the 25s. Directed by Louis Milestone, written by Maxwell Anderson, George Abbott, Del Andrews, and C. Gardner Sullivan. Cinematography by Arthur Edison. Music by David Broekman, starring Lou Ayres and Louis Walheim. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Okay, because this is a revisit, if you have not been with us before for one of our various revisit episodes, which we usually do on the holidays to make these episodes shorter for my editing time, so I might be able to enjoy them. And I know this isn't a normal holiday in the calendar, but It's my parents' anniversary, my mom's birthday, and normally I go to spend time with her. I can't this weekend, but in the near future. Normally, our first segment isn't quite so long, and so this might be a shorter episode. I apparently will not be getting that this evening, but that's all right. We had a good, robust discussion in the first segment here. So instead, we start with the Stanley Rubric and we revisit what we did prior. So going back to September of 2020, we had Legacy, which is the category we always start with, at an 8. Now, a reminder to the audience out there, Legacy is a score determined by how the perception of the film is legacy-wise 5 years after it originally came out to today. So because this movie came out in 2010, we're looking at roughly 2015 to 2025, where we are currently, and how this film has been perceived by both the industry and the general audience. 5 and 5 points awarded to both of those groups for a total of 10. Dad, did we get this right or wrong?
I think for the most part, we got it right. I would give it a half point higher for the industry simply because it's had legs, and I think it's a direct influence on Steve Jobs and several of the other tech biopics that came out subsequent to that. Not to mention the fact that now we've got what looks like a go forward on Facebook or on social network too. So I'm going to say it should be an 8.5, 4.5 for the industry, 4 for the public.
I have the same score overall at an 8.5, but I have it arriving at a different point in time. I think this is a 5 from the industry point of view because it's a revered movie. It's been commonly mentioned among the best films of this century so far. Mind you, it's only 25 years, so you take that with a grain of salt. But I think this has been high among the critics and the industry alike. You have recognizable actors, Andrew Garfield, Jesse Eisenberg, who did star in stuff, or at least were part of movies preceding this. But I think they got a certain star status because of this movie. Andrew Garfield, I think, directly gets Spider-Man because of this movie.
He was already cast as Spider-Man when they started filming. Now, they might have been like, he's going to be the co-lead of the new Fincher. And that may be why you know what? Because it was Amy Pascal of Sony. She saw that Fincher cast him, goes and sees the Red Riding trilogy, and then from there is like, hey, I think he's our Spider-Man. He's about to blow up with Social Network. Surprisingly, doesn't get an Oscar nomination.
So with that being said, I mean, even Fincher, he obviously was known before this. I think his films carried a certain level of cachet and notoriety, particularly within the industry. But if you're saying, where does he have like his true apex of he can get just about anything made, it's probably immediately after this movie. And he goes out and he does Gone Girl. And I think that was nominated for Best Picture.
So that was a Best Picture nominee, but also, no, actually it wasn't, I don't think. No, it was. But before that, he did Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Oh, that's right.
Because Rooney Mara was directly in his next movie. So, but turns another book into a huge best-selling film, and I don't think he gets the cachet to make that movie without Social Network.
But I think Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross become like the hot composers, scorers after this movie. They've gone on to do, I think, multiple Oscars after this. I know they at least got one for Soul. I think they might have another one in there.
I love that score.
So there are a lot of people that got either a higher pedigree or backing because of this movie. And I think this is revered within the industry. Where I don't think this has the staying power is with the audience. And that's why I have that at a 3.5. I think it has staying power with cinephiles. But if you're just talking about the general movie-going audience, the people that will go to Fast and Furious and Marvel movies and other things, ask them when's the last time they saw The Social Network. And I don't know, Dad, did you take our poll this week?
I think I forgot.
Okay. But even so, I think there are probably a lot of people who have seen the movie, have name recognition of it, but I don't know if it carries quite the same weight that it did in the moment that this was made and came out. So I end up at an 8.5 as well, but just at a slightly different way of getting there.
I think I'm going to be higher. I'm definitely 5 on the industry because I think the New York Times poll just came out, very high on that. It makes so many critics best of the 2010s, and I think so many people try and replicate this movie. I think it's an easy 5 in the industry. I think for the audience, I'm going to be a little bit more generous for 2 reasons. One, at least once a week when I'm thumbing through Instagram or Facebook or whatever, the Saverin scene where he's pushed out of the company always comes up. That clip is always, it's a TikTok favorite, and it always pops up. And so at least in that kind of cachet, it's there. And then also I did a little poll at work today because everyone was like, oh, what'd you do for your birthday last night? And I was like, well, I watched a movie. And they were like, what'd you watch? So I'm doing a podcast on the Social Network. And the gentleman to my right is, I bet Rodney's probably 55, 60. He's like, oh, that's a good movie. And then Molly, who's probably around 50, she was to the right of him. She's like, yeah, I like that movie a lot. The only person that didn't know was Ryan, who's to my left. He's probably 7 or 8 years younger than I am. So maybe early 30s, late 20s. And he had not heard of it. He was not aware of it. But everyone else was like, oh, yeah, that's a good movie. And there was like 10 of us in the room. So I think it does have that reputation. And I think you mentioned things like Fast and the Furious. I think this is the kind of movie, if you're somebody who loves like Fast and the Furious, the James Bond franchise, Marvel, this is a good, like, that's my smart movie. Like that, yeah. That's my, like, that's my brainy, like, I like that one. That's my good drama. So I'm going to go 4.5 for the public. I think the notoriety is there. And I understand the 3.5. All of my siblings today, they're all like, hey, I like the Social Network. They all know it.
I think there is a lot of support for the film overall, but I guess, Dad, you're also at an 8.5, and we negotiate the final score on these revisits. You would also have to potentially come up. Where are you at?
I'm pretty solid at my 4 on the public, and I think I was very generous in going up to 4.5 on the industry.
What do you say about a 5 and a 4 breaking down to a 9?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with you. Both of us have staked out that we have a 5 on the industry.
If you come up to a public of 4, I guess I'll go to 5 for the industry.
All right. So we're settling at 9?
Yes.
Okay, so then we'll move from an 8 to a 9 on Legacy. Now, let's go to impact and significance. This movie is only 15 years old. All of us experienced it in the moment that it was made. This is taking for account the first 5 years after it was made. Again, between the two groups that we just discussed for Legacy, we take into account audience and the industry here, but it's within that first 5-year window. What was the impact and significance felt between the industry and the general audience? Originally on this one, in September of 2020, we had an 8. Dad, did we get this right or wrong?
I think we probably got it a little bit wrong. The number of nominations and how well it was received among the industry and the Academy, the rise of several of the actors from this film, I think the industry within that 5 years should have been a 5. And the public, I mean, it was the 30-something ranked film, but it still made a lot of money. It got a lot of buzz, especially on DVD and such.
Tom, can I ask you a question? Tom, I was just curious. I know you said 32nd worldwide. Do you know the split between domestic and international there?
No, but I can look it up.
Sorry. Go ahead, Dana. I was just curious.
No, I would go with a 4 there, so I think it's a 9.
Because I would imagine this sways pretty heavily domestically, because imagine like listening to a dub version of this or subtitled.
All right, so it made 43.1% of its money domestically and made 56.9 internationally.
Really? Okay, so that is more generous internationally than I thought. Okay.
Yeah. Again, I think this was not one where people caught it in the theater, and I don't know how large the theatrical window was in the moment that it came out. I think this came out in October. And
it was October 3rd or 10th, one of the two.
It was not a great time unless you're going to be up for Oscars for a movie like this to come out and like have that kind of sway. If you wanted this to have that level of return, and I think it could have, you put this movie out like a week before Thanksgiving. And this would have performed probably 30% better in my estimation.
Right, yeah.
Now, I agree for the most part with where Dad, again, finds his score. I also have a 9, but I have a 4.5 and a 4.5. I can't quite get to a 5 on the industry immediately, even as big as some of the people from this movie came out within that 5-year window. But I also think that we might be discounting, again, how much of an impact this movie made. I remember people talking about it. It was a water cooler movie at the time that it was out. Even if it was in rental or people catching it after the fact or talking about it, it had a cultural moment. And I think has, as we mentioned before, affected how we perceive these people and these events so closely that it's going to be hard for me not to have a higher impact than the 8. So I also have a 9.
Yeah, so I'm lockstep with you guys. I think 9 is the correct score here. I would say 5 industry, 4 audience. And industry, it launches so many careers. Max Minghella gets work off of this. Obviously Armie Hammer is made from this movie. I will leave him, if we discuss him, we'll leave him to the side for now. But yeah, he gets somewhat of a career off of this. I mean, he gets cast in J. Edgar.
Yeah, and that aged well too.
But if you're him, of course you take that role. Opposite Leo, being directed by Eastwood, of course you would. And then obviously Eisenberg gets his Oscar nomination for this. Garfield doesn't, but gets incredibly close. Reznor and Ross win the Oscar. Sorkin wins the Oscar. I think industry, without a doubt, 5. In the buzz of this movie, at least for me when I was, I think 24 when this movie came out, everyone I knew was talking about it. Mm. They didn't necessarily go see it immediately, but they're all talking about it. So I think 4 is a pretty solid way for this. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Tom. If it came out maybe even 3 weeks later, it would do better, because in the theater at the same time is The Town, which this probably scooped some of that money, and then Town probably takes some of its money, because they're both like intelligent, smart movies. The Town is obviously R-rated, but
The Town is going to appear in Wisconsin Rapids because it's got action and violence. And The Social Network was never going to appear on a big screen in Wisconsin Rapids.
Did it not really? Okay. So that's my weird perception, because I saw this in the big Cineplex. My wife and I lived together at the time, and we were dating, and we went to the AMC Parkway Point right out of the corner from the house. And it was great. Like, we had a blast. It was opening night. It was packed, left exhilarated.
The Rogers Cinema with 7 theaters in it, which I think there's a picture still floating around our Instagram somewhere, is not known for putting on smart dramas by people like David Fincher. It's just not. Like, the only way that they're going to show stuff is if it gets nominated for Oscars. Otherwise, it's got to have an explosion, a car chase, some sort of talking cartoon animal. Those are the kinds of things, the low-hanging, most common denominator stuff in order to appear there.
Yeah.
And I think it loses out on a little bit of that by... It's still a great movie. I mean, I don't have any issue with that. It's just trying to place it up against some other movies at that moment. And 2010 is a pretty good year. I think you're going to have a harder time if you don't pick your spot specifically, because this movie is made for people in college, and people in college were going to go see movies on Thanksgiving break, not in the middle of midterms.
Oh, I went to 3-4 movies a week.
You're an outlier, as we pretty much know. Yeah. Anyway,
I went about once every 2 weeks.
Again, outlier. Impact and significance on this one, we will move to a 9. There's nothing to negotiate here, so we move from an 8 to a 9 overall. Now, let's move to novelty on this one, where I think there might be some good discussion here. Originally on this one, we had an 8.33. Now, that was before this season, where we started splitting this category as well between the originality of anything having to do with the film and execution. 5 and 5 points each for both of those, for a total of 10. I think we slightly got this one wrong. I have this at a 9. I don't know of too many other films that are told quite like this. Even for Sorkin dialogue, this is told in a very unique way by Fincher. Like, he puts a very distinct spin on the ball in telling this, and it feels much more like a noir, non-linear, told crime thriller action film. It's kind of got that propulsive action to it. So it doesn't really fit neatly into one genre or another. And it's borrowing so many other things from other places to make a really good end product. But because of that, I think it does have a slight bit of unicorn status. But at the end of the day, it's got too many other borrowed things that feel a little bit familiar to give it a full 5. So I have a 4 there. But I have a 5 on execution because, well, I mean, this is, for this kind of heady movie, it's really well told. The music is great. The editing is fantastic. The dialogue is excellent. The direction is excellent. The acting, for the most part, is excellent. So I have a 9.
Personally, I think this is an easy 5 on execution. Like, no questions asked. And this time watching it might have been the first time I really clocked it. There's a moment where it is one shot, you're watching Zuckerberg, and then the next shot, it moves to the other deposition, and it just changes the angle, and then it goes back to the next shot comes, and it's back to the first deposition, and then it goes back to the second one, and you're starting to get disoriented. You're like, whoa, what's happening? And Sorkin's dialogue very funnily says, he has Zuckerberg being like, I'm confused too. He's like, I'm in 2 of these things. And it's this moment that is so kind of punk rock from Fincher, because he's flashing between 2 different depositions at the same exact time in the movie. Or sorry, he's flashing between 2 separate depositions at different points in time, but he's intermixing them together because it's all running in Zuckerberg's head. And then you lay on the score, the acting. The only performance in this that I don't think really holds up like the rest is Dakota Johnson. It's not quite her fault.
She just apparently can't act.
Yeah, and I maybe I had the blinders on because I think Dakota Johnson is attractive. So I'm like, she's got the charisma, she's got the juice, and now I'm like, maybe not. She's... that scene's tough. The scene's fine. Timberlake's very good in it. But I think everything, from an execution technical standpoint, is an easy 5. The novelty and the originality of it, the screenplay, I want to go 4.5, but I think I'm going to have to land a 4. So I think I'm going to be right with you, Tom, at a 9.
Well, I'll agree to the 5 for the execution. the originality, Citizen Kane, Edison with Spencer Tracy. I mean,
that's one you're pulling out is like we have the movie recognized as possibly the greatest of all time that was like a 6-time honoree by the BFI, and Spencer Tracy's Edison. Okay, sorry.
it was he had a lot of high marks for that. I think he got nominated for an Academy for it.
Great.
But it's not,
never heard the film before.
But it's the same type or same kind of thing, which is young genius and how he has to traverse through life and all the pitfalls and such. Okay. So it's been done before. So I was between a 3.5 and a 4. So I'm not even going to argue. I'm going to say I'll go with 4 also.
All right. So then we have a 9. All right. That looks like a good spot to stop for our second break. We'll be back with the rest of the categories after this. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our Master Greatest Movies of All Time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find us the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 248 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Lonnie Anderson, 79, American actress, known for WKRP in Cincinnati and the movie Stroker Ace. Kelly Mack, 33, American actress, known for The Walking Dead. Well, for me, Lonnie Anderson was one of my early heartthrobs when I was a teenager, and I loved WKRP in Cincinnati. It was a show that was just absolutely brilliantly written, and the premise was wonderful. CBS really fucked that thing up by moving it around all the time. I think if they would have left it in one spot, it would have gained a following and would have been on for probably 10 years. It was so good. I mean, it's to the point where I can remember the lyrics to the theme song. So, yet to this day, I can 9 to 5 packing and unpacking up and down the dial. Maybe you and me were never meant to be. Just maybe think of me once in a while. I'm on WKRP in Cincinnati. Loved that show. Loved her in it.
And so we remember these here fondly for their contributions with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, let's head back to the Stanley Rubric. This is the category, like last week, where we probably will have the most to say. Classicness. There is so much nuance, as you can tell from our first segment, on the making of this movie, the fallout of this movie, other associations. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about here. With that being said, I would like to go last and see where you both fall on this, because I've been thinking about this a lot this week and where I may stand. So I'd like to hear the other opinions first and understand where I have my line of attack, whether I agree with maybe you can persuade me or not. But I think that I might be rather low. For the sake of it, back in September of 2020, this was an 8.83. So roughly 5 years ago, we probably felt very different about this movie than we do now.
Let's start with the low-hanging fruit, as we like to mention on this, which is Armie Hammer. Okay. His career is now him doing a podcast from a abandoned house in Jamaica. That's his career. He's doing a podcast from an abandoned house. He painted the wall himself using paint that he got secondhand from some hardware store in Jamaica, and that's his career. He can't get any work.
And I think he actually is currently working. He was just in the new Ua Bowl movie.
Okay.
He's back in the States.
Well, then this is more recent because this was an interview I saw with him in the Hollywood Reporter. And they had the whole thing with photographs and everything from him in his podcast studio in Jamaica.
I don't know what you're seeing, Peterson, because since the articles and the other stuff and the stories have come out, his last appearance was on a film that at the time everything was coming out, he was in this movie and it kind of tanked the movie, Death on the Nile. Since then, he has one acting credit as Cannibal Ken in a music video from last year. Otherwise, he is not listed in anything. Not even upcoming projects.
I could have sworn he was in the new like Ua Bowl movie or something. If you know Ua Bowl, he's like
This was a thing that he was, took an abandoned house and he had to clean it all out and everything else. He's living down there and he's doing a podcast called Hammer Time.
Yeah, so here it is. He's in Night Driver coming up. Just wrapped principal photography.
Okay.
It's not listed on IMDb. Oh, I guess I'm sorry, it is. I didn't click on the right thing. He's got Frontier Crucible.
That's got to be the Ua Bowl one. Who's directing?
No, this is Travis Mills with William H. Macy. Okay.
Who has his own problems from his
and Citizen
marriage.
Vigilante. That's the Ua Bowl movie.
That's the okay. I was like, I know he's got stuff coming up
with somebody else named Costas Mandalore. A man takes justice into his own hands, hunting down criminals. His vigilante crusade makes him a social media star, but puts him at odds with the local police chief. Okay.
I bet he will not be in any episodes of Walking Dead.
I don't know who John Bevilacqua is.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
that's his other film, Night Driver.
I have a hard time marking it down too much for a guy that was not really a huge character in the film. I mean, he was playing two, so I would go down a half point from there. The biggest problem I have is that we are full of people in this film who have been proven to be rather shitty people. Peter Thiel, Mark Zuckerberg,
Sean Parker.
Sean Parker, I saw an interview. He said the worst thing that ever happened to him was this film because everybody assumed he looked like Justin Timberlake. And then when women actually meet him, they go, well, ugh. And that's his comment. That was his thing. Is this film ruined him because he couldn't score anymore? I mean, that just sounds like something that would be from everything I've read.
Also, who would have known that the head of Napster or the guy who created Napster was Sean Parker in like 2006, 2007? Who is just randomly...
Sean Fanning. Sean Fanning would be the guy you'd think about founding Napster at that point.
Yeah. That conversation does not make sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
So there's so many people in there that are just not, So we start with our 6, and I go down a half point for Hammer. And just the fact that we have a bunch of other people that I think have proven to be rather slimy. I mean, Zuckerberg just had to have his yacht done because in the last 2 years, he burned 250,000 gallons of diesel oil on his yacht going around the world. The amount of carbon footprint that was left in his comment was so. I mean, it just kind of floors me. So I got to give at least 1.5 points down for that. So I'm 2 points. I'm at a 4.
So I guess I'm going to be coming out the very high person on this because I understand that it's about unsavory people, but that's kind of the point. I think we're supposed to be watching these people. And I think if you come away thinking they're heroes, you're watching the wrong movie, which is kind of like the Wolf of Wall Street thing. It's like if you come away thinking Jordan Belfort is any way a hero or redeemed, I think you're watching a different movie than I am. I think some things that really push this up in classicness for me is that push and pull between Sorkin, who I think is more of an optimist, and then Fincher, who's more of a pessimist. And that push and pull between the two creates a really, really interesting film. And Tom, you already said earlier, compared to things like Citizen Kane, Edison was thrown out.
What?
But I think this is it's in the conversation with something like Citizen Kane. You know, I do not think it's quite as good as Citizen Kane, because I'm in the camp, unlike you, Tom, that I think Citizen Kane's like one of the great films ever. It's difficult to, you know, the Hammer thing is what it is. He's one person, but take any movie ever created. Somebody's probably murdered somebody. Somebody's probably, you know, or like, you know, rape, or it's something happened to somebody on a movie set. So if it's the usual suspects where it's like half the people working on it, that's a little different. But here it's Hammer. And I don't think by any stretch of the imagination Fincher wants you to leave thinking, oh, Peter Thiel, that's a good guy. Saverin's the only one I can kind of say they're sympathetic towards. Anyone else, I'm like, even Zuckerberg, I think Fincher has a really complicated relationship with him. And so I'm at a 9.5 on classicness here. I think it is only gotten better with each passing year. And I can tell that Tom's going to be like a 2 just by the smirk. But, you know, I mean, from the beginning of watching this, we see the misogyny in Mark Zuckerberg, and he is almost immediately called out for it because Eric Albright calls him on his shit. And I think that Zuckerberg and Sorkin are like, no, like this guy's gross. My wife, we were 10 minutes in and she's like, oh, this reminds me of being like at house parties in 2003, 2004, 2005. She immediately was like, that's what it feels like. So I think it captures the spirit of this so well. So I think I'm at a 9.5. Yeah.
All right. I may have been unnecessarily low on this, on the standpoint that I think I'm taking out some frustrations with real life events and people on a fictional movie that's based on real events. And so I'm going to try and do my best. This is why I wanted both of you to begin, so I maybe had some separation from my personal feelings from the movie itself. Because I think most of social media is evil and has actually done severe damage to the world in our attention span, in our commerce, in our communications, our ability to relate to other people, just period, and has made us much more separated.
What did you say, Tom? I was busy watching TikTok.
Tom, my question there would be, yes, I agree. Social media is kind of like one of the evils of the modern age, but it also gives the opportunity for a podcast like this to exist and reach an audience.
If the trade-off is that we could live much more fuller lives talking to people in a bar, or people on the internet can hear my voice and rail against me because I ruined their birthday, because I dared to ask whether Sissy Spacek should have been playing a 14-year-old when she's 30.
If that ruins their birthday, I'm sorry for them.
I will take the latter every single time.
Goes back to the incel conversation.
Yes, and that's my point. I think that I disagree with you just wholeheartedly, and I think the majority of people walking out of this not only felt a certain level of sympathy, but thought, oh my God, it's going to be really cool to be Mark Zuckerberg. because the wealth and the cool factor behind Facebook and all these people you're traveling around and interacting with, and it felt cool, good or bad. The point of the movie where it comes out is when Facebook is at its probably apex of societal hype. Like, it is so involved in the cultural moment that we were in when this movie came out that it would have been hard for it to be dispositive of, or negative, I guess is the better word, for it to be negative on something that everybody was like, are you on Facebook? How can I contact you or whatever? It became like another appendage, which is why I think that these should have been regulated like utilities at a certain point. But because of that, and because of this movie, and because of the hype, and because of the naivety of the leadership that it helped promote, we let them take a pass and let them move fast and break shit. And I think that, unfortunately, whether good or bad, this movie is somewhat responsible, whether that's their intention or not, in helping promote this lifestyle and the cool factor and these mysterious billionaires. And maybe this is the socialist in me coming out. Not that anybody is unaware that I definitely am.
So that's the Trotsky beard?
But I just have a hard time in some degree separating the cultural impact this movie had as somewhat of a propaganda tool for promoting this class of people. For the guy that is currently the number 3 wealthiest person in the universe and has a significant amount of power on how we perceive our world. The only person at this point who is more powerful individually than him is probably Donald Trump. And that's about it. Even Elon on X and whatever else has been somewhat neutralized. At a point, you could have said Trump and Elon were about equal. And then we saw that Trump definitely moved ahead, and Elon's been mysteriously quiet since this whole Epstein thing started unraveling. So I think Zuckerberg at this point, because of the modes in which we still communicate through Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook and some of these other places, as a worldwide conglomerate, has an enormous amount of power that we've allowed him, and it's going to be really hard to reel some of that back in. Yes, Armie Hammer is in this, but he's somewhat peripheral. It's not like the Kevin Spacey conversation from last week where it's hard to watch that movie without thinking of Kevin Spacey and Kevin Spacey's many other things going on, or Bryan Singer and how many other things you have to relate and associate with The Usual Suspects. That's a different conversation. So I don't really hold that much against this. And I don't even really want to talk about Armie Hammer all that much. So this movie can't have any timelessness to it yet because it hasn't hit that 25-year mark.
I guess I just fundamentally read things differently.
Yes.
I've got a fundamental different reading of the movie, which, you know what?
I think I'm with you, Dad. I'll go with, originally I was at a 2, which is why I really smirked when you said that. But I don't know if it's fair to hold that far down against this movie. So I'm willing to go to the 4, and so we have 2 4s and a 9.5 right now.
My question here is, and this is obviously a different context, a different movie, but do you blame Jaws for all of the movies in its wake and all the blockbusters that suck, even though it's, I would say, a masterpiece? Is it number 1 on Gmode now? Number 1?
Yes.
It's the number 1 movie of all time. And you're not going to blame Jaws for, any of the number of terrible movies that come after it. And that's kind of how I feel about this. It's like, I'm not going to blame Fincher for making a movie that I don't think glorifies any of these people by any stretch. And I find it hard to connect with that idea of any of this glorifying these people.
I think this is the same discussion that we had similar to Fight Club. I'm not sure why Jaws is being brought into this, because Steven Spielberg has made Jaws 3 times. Jurassic Park is nothing more than Jaws in a dinosaur theme park. Sure. And frankly, Jaws is just a recreation of Duel, which is also a very good film of his. Mm-hmm. So, okay, fine. If you want the imitators, why would I hold that against him? But Jaws didn't go out and say, all right, we need to eliminate all shark population from the world. Was there more shark hunting? Yes. But the reason why it is number 1 on our list is because it kicks off a complete new revolutionary marketing with the summer blockbuster, because it has an immense amount of cultural impact. It was the number 1 film of all time at the box office in the moment that it came out, and it still somehow seems not to age and does well even with kids today. That's why it's number 1. But I'm not here to litigate Jaws. I am here to just say that I think The Social Network has some responsibility. Again, David Fincher is not responsible for how his movie is perceived by the audience in the same way that Fight Club, but the movie is responsible for how the audience has received it and how well that audience has necessarily taken it with the influence of real world events. It's the same kind of conversation that we had around Fight Club, which is another David Fincher film. And I had kind of the same take on it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the scale's balanced differently in Fight Club for me, because I am on that side of the scale with you for Fight Club, and this I'm not. I think
again,
Fincher hates these people.
Our baseline is a 6.
Yeah.
We're both thinking that this movie has aged negatively because it doesn't. Part of the other part of how this has not aged well is because at the time that it was made, that was the whole story. But ever since then, we have so many other things wrapped around social media and Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and all this other history that's 15 years on. We have 3 times the amount of history with this guy and these people that we did when this movie came out. And so the story feels incomplete. And I don't think Aaron Sorkin might be the right person to write part 2, but he is definitely not the right person to direct part 2, because he's not going to carry with it. Fincher should be finishing this part 2.
I agree.
Because this is the part to me that Fincher would be best at, is the perversion, the downfall, the Godfather 2-esque part 2, where it goes into the really dark sides of social media. I'm not sure why he's not doing it.
It's weird to me that he's not, other than the fact that Sorkin, I guess he wants to win Best Director too. Because, I mean, that's not going to happen because he's just not a capable director in that way. I don't think he's a bad director.
No, but he's not adding anything through his direction.
No, not by any means. I mean, there are moments in this movie, I compared it to Kubrick, and I think, personally, I just think Fincher is keyed into the way society is changing. Obviously, it's not a finished product. And I think that's partly why I think it is higher on Classic for me, is that it's not a finished product, but he is giving you the roadmap to understand the guy hitting refresh right there. He is a monster. He has become Frankenstein, Frankenstein's monster. And what he's
justice for Dr. Frankenstein on this show.
Let me ask this question. Okay. At the end of the film, if you ask 10 people, would you at this point in time trade positions with Mark Zuckerberg? I will say 9 people out of 10 would say yes.
And you have to have all the emotional scars with it.
Correct.
So, and the question would be, do I have my moral compass in the way I view the world? Or am I this little space alien?
You can have your moral compass, but you have to come with all of the trauma that is allegedly behind who his character is.
That's not real trauma.
Who's to say?
Right.
Everybody's trauma is different, and it's very important to them.
Except trauma is a very touchstone term. Instead of trauma, you have to take it with the same life experiences, that you have to have the same things. You've lost friends, you've been sued, you've been in court, etc. Call it trauma, call it life experiences, whatever. But everything that he went through to be in his place at that moment in time, would you take it? I think 9 out of 10 would. And that paints him in a very positive position that I don't think is merited now.
But if you take the money away, nobody would be in that position. Right?
Maybe. I mean, he still is like by far the youngest person on this list. He's 41 and Elon's 54. We have Larry Page at 52, Sergey Brin's 51. I mean, so most of his contemporaries are like 10 years older than he is. There's a lot of guys in their 70s and 80s on the billionaires list. I think the next highest one is the cryptocurrency billionaire from Canada, Changpeng Zhao, who I've never even heard of before. But they don't have the cultural cachet of Mark Zuckerberg. Excuse me, Zhang Zhiming from China, who I guess must own or at least has a piece of TikTok, also is on this list, but he's number 27 and he only has $65 billion.
Well, and he's primarily the one that Trump is attacking with the 100% tariff on microchips. Apparently, his company controls a large portion of the microchip production in China.
But Eduardo Severin's 36th on this list. I think he's doing okay.
Tom, where am I on the list?
I don't know your personal finances. Yes, the money is inevitably attractive. And that's why I'm not sure that I agree that Dad's question is necessarily fair. But it's also saying this guy founded a company. He had a singular vision. He's a genius. And he's also kind of got this dark, brooding, mysterious side to him that maybe he just needs a hug and he'll be okay. I do think, and you and I have discussed it, you find the movie where he is an evil person by the end. I think most people find him to be sympathetic by the end, and that aids to this perspective, again, where we give him a pass because we've seen some of his life experience portrayed on film, fair or not, that has allowed us to say, well, he's human. It's okay. He's doing his best.
Well, and I don't know if I think he's fully evil, but I do think he is he's become like almost pure id by the end of this movie. And I do think, and we can put it to bed soon. I know this is kind of the most contentious category now, but I don't think that Fincher appreciates these people or likes these people. And I don't think Sorkin really does, but I think Sorkin, the screenwriter, wants you to find an end with them. Like, he wants you to connect with them in some way. And I guess it's much easier for me to leave out the real world kind of ramifications of what specifically Facebook wrought. It is much easier for me to leave that to the side.
So, because we still have yet to negotiate where the final number is going to be, everything that you've argued for is not for a method of classicness. It's actually in not taking away points. So, realistically, I should say your 9.5 really doesn't make a whole lot of sense based on how we've done the scoring of the show. Really, you should be at a 6 because that's the baseline. You have yet to say where this movie is actually ahead of its time or it's promoted something.
Yeah, so I think the biggest things for me for classicness that push it up are, I think Fincher understands where this technology is going to go and plants the seeds within the movie. I think so many scenes within this film, and I think one of the big things that I talked about was how he is showing the changing of the guard between the Winklevosses and Eduardo Saverin, how they try to operate the world like their fathers did, and how Harvard is always run. And it's just not that world anymore. In the blink of an eye, all that just went away. And I think that's a huge, to be that close to it and that perceptive, I think gives it at least a point up for me, if not close to a point and a half.
Okay. Taking that into account, and this is part of where I've had some difficulty with this category, is you again, trying to separate the two things out from each other. I can see where there's a prophetic nature to how users operate this level of power in the way that is portrayed on screen here. But I also think it doesn't, you can't, even for the points that I've added, I'm still gonna have to take points away. So even if I were to add the point and a half, I still gotta, it basically becomes neutral at that point for me at best. So I'd be willing to maybe come up to a 6, but Dad, you're the other 4.
If we can agree to a 6, I can go to a 6. Because I do think you make a good point, Peterson, that it is somewhat prophetic as to where this may end up. That it's eating its own children.
Yeah, I can live with a 6. I think that's I think it's harsh for the film, but I think.
Well, mind you, I started at a 2, so I've worked up the most.
But I think it will be interesting to see what the sequel brings. In that.
Yeah.
But I wish it was Fincher directing it, because I think it's just not going to have the same tension that this one does. And I think that another thing that we didn't really talk about, but I think it plants the seeds of kind of like the paranoid incel on the internet in Sean Parker. You hear about it at the beginning, like, oh, their company was pushing me out. They're pushing me out. I was the kid. And then the last time we meet him, what's he say? Did Eduardo plant the cocaine? Did he do that? It's like that mindset that somebody's always out to get you, even when you're the wealthiest people in the world.
Yeah.
I think that's very prophetic and very, Donald Trump, one of the wealthiest people in America, president of the country, is still like, oh, everyone hates me. I'm so put upon. It's like, no. You're privileged. You're wealthy. You're just so insecure and need somebody to love you. I think there's great, like, if Sorkin were to write a Trump movie, I think it would be somewhat similar to Zuckerberg, in the sense that he's trying to get into that inside of this guy's head and understand, how can somebody who has all the privilege, all the money, I mean, the beautiful wives, how is he still so empty inside? What's he searching for?
His father's love.
Rosebud.
Yeah, Rosebud. There will be blood. That's that same thing. It's like, how do these men, these kind of great mythic Titanic men, I use great not in the sense that these are great men, but like, powerful men, Titanic like personalities. That's what the bedrock and foundation of like some of the greatest films ever are. Citizen Kane, There Will Be Blood. I think this is in that conversation.
So we settle at a 6 here. So that moves down from our 8.83. So far we have added in 2.67 points and taken away 2.83 points. Rewatchability. Originally on this one, we had a 6.5 in September of 2020. And I would say, in an objective baseline on this one, I think this is drastically wrong. I have it at an 8.5. I think this movie moves. It's very quick. It's fun to watch, which is kind of weird to say. I think that the way it's done, between the dialogue and the direction, it moves so quickly and it's so propulsive that it feels like an action film, even though it's just dialogue heavy. And so for me, I also don't think it feels overly long what is this, 2 hours? So
It's
from
exactly
Two
2
hours
hours.
and 10 minutes.
No, it's exactly 2.
So with that being said, I have it at an 8.5.
Well, for me, it reminded me much of like gawking at a train wreck. You just can't put it down once you start because you're just watching these people and you're going, how many ways can they self implode? And so actually, I think the more often I've watched it, the more I appreciate the film. So I'm wondering if another watch in the near future would merit even more desire to watch the film. I had a 7.5.
So I'm going to be at a 9 here because I think every single time I've watched it, I think this might be the 7th time, and in a 15-year, every year and a half or 2 years I'm watching it. I think that's pretty good. And I think with every watch, I like it more, respect it more, and find it zippier, funnier, and as you said, Tom, fun to watch. Like this movie, literally people are talking before you've seen the logos of the studios. Like this movie starts with a bang. It opens with one of the greatest scenes of the movie and just doesn't stop from there. So I think it's an easy 9. And you know what? If I watched it next week, I might be like you, Dana, and go up a little bit.
Well, we don't have to negotiate this one. This is the one category in a revisit because of the subjective nature of it that we're just going to average it out. So that'll be an 8.33 between the three of us. For audience score, originally when we were doing this in season 1, we only used the Rotten Tomatoes score. We have since updated that. Oddly enough, the Rotten Tomatoes score has actually gone up from an 8.6 at the time to an 87%. Where it slightly declines is in the Google percentage is an 83. So we have an 8.5 in this category, moving down 0.1 points. So to repeat the category, we moved on legacy from an 8 to a 9. On impact and significance, we moved from an 8 to a 9. On novelty, we moved from an 8.33 to a 9. On classicness, we moved from an 8.83 to a 6. On rewatchability, we moved from a 6.5 to an 8.33. And audience score, we moved down 0.1 points from an 8.6 to an 8.5. Originally, the final total on this one was a 48.26, currently placing it at 95 on our Grandmaster Gmote list. Our new current score will be 49.83. And that will currently place it on our list between Goldfinger and Airplane for number 70.
It's a good
You
sandwich.
certainly have an interesting list.
That we do.
Okay.
Yeah. So as always, if you have any commentary for us about how I ruined your birthday, how one of us looks like a particular cartoon rat, any of those types of things.
Who's the cartoon rat?
Ratatouille.
Oh, Ratatouille.
Patton Oswalt. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no way.
Anyway, you can write us at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us at Gmote Podcast on any of our socials, or you can write us at RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmote Podcast. I don't have any remaining questions for this one. I think we've pretty much beat to death whatever there is from the societal impact of the movie and whatever else. The big what if question is going to be how the sequel does and how different the direction of Aaron Sorkin is going to be to David Fincher. And also, is it really the Social Network part 2 if they're not even focused on the Social Network and Mark Zuckerberg?
To me, it's not really a sequel. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's a continuation of the story in some way, but I don't know. It's a weird project.
I am going to try and keep an open mind on it. I think most people, when asked about it, are like, why is this necessary? But anyway, Any remaining questions for either of you?
Well,
Nope.
I've got a remaining statement.
Okay.
I just want to say,
You have the floor.
Dana, I appreciate and thank you for wanting this binge anniversary with me. I know nothing else you'd rather be doing. So,
Well, and thank you for
So-
using your birthday to prep for us.
Yes.
Happy
Well,
belated.
Belated happy birthday.
thank you. Yeah, it was a real barn burner.
So my wife and I celebrated our anniversary last week. We had to be in Madison. We had better opportunities for better restaurants, so we utilized the time then. And tomorrow is my bride's birthday. So,
She's the 7th.
yes.
My wife's the 8th.
So we were supposed to be married in January of 1989. My in-laws decided that was a bad date, and they moved it on us and never told us until they had done everything. Changed the church date, or arranged the pastor, the hall.
Earlier or
everything.
later?
Earlier, 6 months.
6 months earlier?
They just decided that's when we should be married, and they just moved it, and they put it on a date that matched their schedules because they were going to be fishing a couple of those weekends in August. So we got thrown on the day before my wife's birthday, and I've only once combined presents. I told her that because of this, I would never try to combine her birthday and her anniversary present. So, unless she consented. So,
Spoken like
Anyway.
a lawyer. Anyway.
Well, that's what I am.
I did have one question, though, because from you, gentlemen, Tom, going to be graduating law school the next year and a half?
I am on pace for December of 2027. I would not be a full lawyer until I pass the bar, which won't be until like the following. I mean, I could take the exam, I think, in
March.
January or February, but then there's a second
March.
exam in July. It's not in March, Dad. It's January or February.
So you're like 2.5, 3 years from
Yeah.
finishing up, roughly. And Dana, you're 40 years in almost? 25? 35?
36.
36. So
37, he's been married. 36, he's been practicing law, and 35 for his oldest child.
Yes.
and these are obviously not typical court scenes you're going to see in movies because there's no
Correct.
jury. It's not these are closed door depositions. Do these ring accurate? I mean, I will say, I'm sure Zuckerberg is a very unique person to have in a room, but do these ring accurate?
Yes, they
Okay.
do.
Some of it's
You're allowed-
an embellishment because it's film, because
It
like the
is.
personality
I'm sure. Yeah.
does not come out in a deposition, but there's nothing inaccurate. I ended last week's show saying how law school has ruined legal movies for me. I don't find anything in here where it ruins the movie because they did something wrong or there was something problematic. I just don't feel that like the legal portion is all that significant to how it's done other than a storytelling device.
It is accurate because with a deposition, you're allowed way larger latitude with objections and such because there's no jury present. The transcript, if you're going to present it at trial to rebut witness testimony, it'll be cleaned up. It'll have to be redacted. There'll be motions in limine filed with the court. The judge will rule on what is admissible, what is not, what portion has to be removed or redacted and such. But what it does do is it allows you way larger freedom to set the tone, the style, bring out the personal animosities, the various picadillos of the subject. I got very good at doing depositions and setting people up to look like a complete ass by the time they were done.
Zuckerberg is good at making himself look like an ass.
Well, that's the whole point. And then what you do then is use that as the basis then to negotiate your settlement.
Which is
That's what
exactly
you're trying
what
to
she
do.
tells him by the end.
She's
That's
like, yeah.
correct. And she was point on.
She's like, jury's going to see right through you. You're going to pay arm and a leg. Like, as soon as you said that stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense why this is all deposition.
Yep. You're trying to bait people into exploding in the depositions, because you know that if you can get them to do that in there, his lawyer is, or her lawyer is going to immediately go, the chances are likely they'll be able to bait you into that. And if you blow up in front of a jury, you're sunk.
Just from a legal standpoint, essentially creating a company or an LLC to then purchase your current company. How illegal is that?
Oh, it happens constantly. That's how people.
This is America.
Yes. I've had multiple cases where a company is near bankruptcy. So what they do is they sell all their assets to another company they start. And then as a result, all the assets are transferred out and the company has nothing left, and all the creditors of that company, then they file bankruptcy and wipe out the debt.
Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. But any other follow-up?
No, that was it. I was just curious the legal side of this, if it rung accurate or hollow, and it seems like it rings pretty accurate. And I know a lot of this, the dialogue is taken directly from Zuckerberg actually saying it in court, which is...
Well, transcripts of depositions are usually much easier to recover. So, yeah.
Let's just put it this way. A large portion of trial work is acting. You come up with a persona of what you want to present. And I, being the small town lawyer, often try to present myself as the, aw shucks, I'm the every guy. This guy's the big city lawyer. He's a big jerk. You shouldn't listen to him. I'm the guy from town. And it worked a lot of times.
So if there are no further questions, we want to thank Peterson for being back for his 9th episode. You will be back with us again in 2 weeks for Pather Panchali. But until then,
across the board. Classicness.
But until then, go ahead and tell the people what you're working on and where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can catch my back catalog. Work starts at midnight. About 2 months ago, I guess a month ago now, was did Revisionist Almanac, did 1975, had a lot of fun. That's a great year. I mean, it truly is. The 5 movies nominated for Best Picture are Titanic films. So you go check that out. And then, my back catalog here. 8 previous, which seems crazy to think. Basically 10 in a year. 10 in less than a year. I think my first one was my first one was...
I think your first one was like in October of last year.
I think it was my second day at my current job. I just moved back to Atlanta.
Something like that.
I think it was like October 1st. I
think it was the Gone Girl episode.
Was it my first? I talked about a lot of penis.
The way you
for being my first episode.
Thank you for saying episode that time. Anyway. All right. Dad, if you're okay, I think we can skip remaining thoughts for the week.
It's fine.
Well, unless you wanted to talk Naked Gun quick.
Well, I enjoyed it tremendously. The first 20 to 30 minutes was laugh a second or every 10 seconds. As they started getting through the plot, it became harder to get jokes in. They tried, and they did hit some really nice ones. But I enjoyed it tremendously. I think they did a really good job. I would recommend going and seeing, especially if you're a fan of either the 3 movies, or if you're old enough like I am to have seen the original 6 TV episodes that were done. There were only 4 actually aired before ABC canceled it.
There was a TV
you had
show?
to go and rent them.
Mm-hmm.
The other 2. So
I think it's only like 11 or 13 episodes or something.
No, only 6. They only did 6.
Maybe 6 aired, and then there's 6 that
only 4 aired. You had to rent. They put it as a set that you could get on VHS, and I had gotten it and watched the last 2 episodes.
Patron Kieran Black.
Every episode they would have a guest star. It's like all of a sudden this car would screech to a halt and a body would get thrown out and it would land in a ditch, and they'd zoom in and it would be this week's guest star, Lauren Green. And it'd be Lauren Green dead in the ditch.
I was excited to see this movie, partially because I know that you're a big fan and this is your humor level and such. I thought Liam Neeson was really good casting because based on the descriptions of Leslie Nielsen before he kind of did Airplane and did the Naked Gun films, had been a much more serious actor. So I felt, especially because the clips floating around of Liam Neeson in Ted 2 and when he did that bit with Ricky Gervais, I thought he had the right comedic humor. Unfortunately, past the first 10 minutes, it just felt forced and on repeat. And there were a lot of jokes that fell very flat to me. There were some occasional ones that would pop up and make sense. The plotting was a bit like a really cheesy Bond film from like the 80s, like the end of the Roger Moore era kind of Bond level stuff, which I guess kind of works for what the movie's supposed to be, but it was like somehow about world domination in a Naked Gun movie. The Naked Gun movies work when it's like Ricardo Montalban just trying to ship drugs or something. You know, make it a little bit lesser stakes than trying to destroy the entire world and basically do a new society after you come out of your billionaire cave.
I'll say, and I haven't seen it yet. I'm probably not going to be able to see it until it hits VOD. So we got kids and they want to see Freaky Friday, Bad Guys, all those things. But I have a lot invested in it because I do want to see comedies back in movies. Because I think it's the best way to see a comedy. And I think a lot is riding on this one. So I think it's going to get a lot of goodwill in that regard.
The first 10 minutes is fantastic.
Yeah.
And after that, it slowly ebbs away through the course of the film. Like, I still enjoyed it, but it's like a 3 out of 5 for me. It's not like a top level comedy. And I think part of the reason that comedies have died is the writing's just not there. What this movie should have done is what they used to do with certain movies, like the Adam Sandler ones, is find who your star is and then write a movie around what they do best. And if you were going to use Liam Neeson, and I do think that he has the comedic chops, you should have leaned more into what he can do comedically as opposed to trying to force a Leslie Nielsen role onto him, because I don't think those two are quite congruent.
I was watching the trailer for this maybe a week or two ago, and my son was not in front of the screen, but he heard it, and he's like, "Is that Good Cop?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Lego movie, Good Cop, Bad Cop. Is that Good Cop?"
Oh.
So I was like, it is Good Cop, Bad Cop. So he got a little kick out of that. He said, "Can I see the movie?" I'm like, "You're 7. I don't think you're quite ready for this one yet."
Yeah, there's a little bit of an adult nature subject material.
I know there's a blowjob joke just from the trailer, so I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know if I'm quite ready for that conversation. Though my brother, around the age of 11 or 12, did ask my father what a blowjob was because his friends were talking about it. And he's like, "I don't know what that is. Let me go ask my dad."
Well, yeah, simpler times. But anyway, I mean, I'd encourage people to go watch it. I think it's a perfectly enjoyable film. It's just like, don't set the expectations so high that this is like going to be one of the great new comedies. That was the difference in like the mid 2000s when we had that comedy boom, was you had like 5 or 6 of these out in a 3-month span. So if one of them was fine, you'd go to the next one, and that one would probably be even better.
Yeah, and the problem there was you're getting too many of them, and it was too centralized in the same style.
Mm-hmm.
And I like almost like all those movies. Superbad, Role Models, Knocked Up. I mean, all these are really funny movies, but that Rogan, Jonah Hill, like that whole Apatow brand of humor, it was fresh for a minute, and then they didn't evolve.
No.
So I think the biggest problem. I think Rogan is evolving a little bit. And Jonah Hill's obviously evolving to other things. But so, yeah.
All right. Well, that looks like a good place to stop it for this week. Thank you for listening. You still think it's beautiful to die for your country? The first bombardment taught us better. When it comes to dying for country, it's better not to die at all. Next week for our 275th episode, we welcome back 5-time club member Sarah Duncan to discuss possibly the greatest war film ever made, with the original All Quiet on the Western Front from 1930, celebrating its 95th anniversary this year. Directed by Louis Milestone, written by Maxwell Anderson, George Abbott, Del Andrews, and C. Gardner Sullivan, cinematography by Arthur Edison, music by David Broekman, starring Lou Ayres and Louis Walheim. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching The Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at GreatestAllTimeMoviePodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, or TikTok at the handle @CheatModePodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ryan Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.